everybody. We are the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Erin.
I'm Dr. Kristen.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hulu's Mrs. America. We are on to episode 8 of 9. This one is entitled Houston and is set during the National Women's Convention, which I think only happened this one time in Houston in 1977. We are 3 states short of ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment, as they were so kind to remind us. And yeah, the whole episode takes place in and around the events of the National Women's Convention. It focuses mostly on our intrepid little Alice, played wonderfully by Sarah Paulson. We both agreed offline it probably should have been called Alice Part 2, because we really didn't get a lot of any of the other characters that they've shown us. And obviously Alice was used as the lens, which we'll talk about. So it starts with a really emotional race, women on the move, running from Seneca Falls, New York to Houston, which both made Dr. Kristen and I tear up a little bit. All sorts of problems ensue once Pamela and Alice arrive in Houston. They don't have a room. They have to room with pro-ERA people. It's a confusing mess for these blessed women from Illinois. Alice botches her one chance on television and loses her opportunity to speak on the floor. And she sort of starts to spiral out of feeling included in Rosemary's little clique, who Rosemary is like Phyllis Jr. working out there. And eventually we get to the crux of the episode where Alice is drinking alone in a bar. We've all been there at conferences.
I usually have a Kindle, but yeah.
Usually I have my phone or a book. So that, well-meaning strangers don't come up and start conversations with me, like the friendly woman who starts a conversation with Alice, and eventually gives her, a Quaalude or something. And Alice ends up on a trip the light fantastic around the National Women's Convention, with the end result being she sees that all of these leftist, liber women, feminists are human beings with thoughts and feelings and emotions and perspectives. And so it was a useful plot line, but we didn't necessarily, I thought the drug trip was a little bit ridiculous and went on way too long. But we have a couple scenes that we really enjoyed that we want to talk about from Alice's drug trip, and then we end up at the end with Phyllis's rally, which ends up being a success despite her misgivings. And there's quite a contrast of all the women on the convention floor singing "We Shall Overcome," and then one of the first scenes we get from people arriving at Phyllis's rally is a big old Confederate flag. So, we had a couple things that we liked from the episode, including the conversation at the bar with the lovely woman from Now, which kind of started Alice on this road to discovery that, feminists are human beings too. But yeah.
Also, I thought it was a good reminder, the conversations with Pamela about the legal position of women at this time. And that it hadn't, evidently Alice and Buck's marriage is one in which Alice is very comfortable.
Yeah.
And to the point where she even invokes his name to try to get a room at the hotel, which was adorable.
Hilarious.
And it has not, I think some of this, it didn't start with a drug trip. I think the idea that there are marriages that are harmful, and there are marriages that people need to get out of. And it may be whatever his name's legal right to know where Pamela is, but it's certainly not an ethical one. And
And
so we start with that.
Yeah, and I think too, this whole, she's allowed perspective because she doesn't have Phyllis filling her head, right? So any other time Pamela had brought up how bad her marriage was.
Yeah.
Alice had always gone to Phyllis, and Phyllis had like course corrected. But in Houston, she didn't have her. And so she just got to see how damaged Pamela was.
Yep.
Without having that like little Jiminy Cricket on her shoulder.
Yeah. And so then she meets this woman at the bar who turns out to be a lovely conversationalist, and also somebody who empowered her in a very weird way. I'm not surprised she reacted so strongly to the finding out that woman was from Now, because I think this, if we're talking about a human being, the journey that Alice goes on is, sometimes for people it happens in a day, but for most folks it's a longer process.
Yeah.
And if you look at the process of paradigmatic shifts within a human, the first couple steps are still you still get very violent reactions about who you thought you were or what you were always against, kind of thing. So the fact that she freaked out this woman was a Now fit what was happening for me.
Yeah.
But then as she could have gone on this trip, on this delightful walk around the convention center just drunk. We didn't need the drug trip. Like, you can do all of that tipsy, and I don't need the
weird disorientation. And I think too, what started with this woman, and I just realized this as you were talking about it, the woman in the bar, because Phyllis has couched so much of this in religious language.
Yep.
That these women are not women of faith. We are the women of faith. And she brought all those different faith traditions together to oppose the ERA. And Alice is a woman of very deep faith. And I think it was so jarring to pray with this woman who was so kind to her. And then to find out that she was also in Now. Yep. And then we see this religiosity come up several other times for Alice throughout her weird drug trip.
Yeah. Which for me, I said it last episode, but as a person of faith, our conversation as we wrestle with this, with the matter of feminism and all of the political agendas around it, is still very important, and it's not nearly as black and white as a lot of people outside of faith assume that it is. Mm. And so I really appreciated last week a couple of those little glimpses. I definitely appreciated it this week. I loved the conversation with the nun offering Eucharist, because that nun could be excommunicated for that, and I love that she did it anyway. Yep. I am a Protestant, and therefore it doesn't, I don't believe in a consecration of the Eucharist in that way, but I know that for me, serving Eucharist is one of the coolest and holiest things I get to do. And so that moment was for Alice. And if that's not a part of your faith tradition or something you understand, I want you to know that the person that they've told us who Alice is, that would be one of the most significant events of her life, taking a Eucharist from a woman. A piece of the accepting the Eucharist and what that was like. And then there was a hymn at the end of the closing credits. And this is part of, I think this show has a lot of things to say, capital T, capital S. And I am grateful that one of them is that women of faith are part of the liberal movement.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that they could have couched her journey towards seeing the humanity in these other women just in that way, but they're human beings, they're just like us. They're not these evil, horrible people that we have been told that they are. But I think it made it even more powerful that they did it through her faith, and that the realization she came to at the end when she confronted them, the Stop ERA women before they headed to the convention floor, was but I'm a Christian, and this isn't what Christians do. We are hurting these people. We are attacking these people, and they are not attacking us.
This is not defense. This is offense. And why are we doing this?
Why are we doing it? Yeah, it was, fair dues for the show. I just know tangentially through my relationship with you, the lack of respect and space that people of faith are given in a lot of television shows. It's a real easy punchline.
And we do it to ourselves, in a lot of ways, but we are the lowest hanging fruit. A lot.
But it's nice to see the level of respect and pushback to, especially against a person like Phyllis Schlafly,
and Lottie what's her nuts. So
who manipulated people of faith into these political positions. So those were really great things to happen. Could have done without the drug trip.
But there's just different ways to do it. This was the only episode so far where I was just like,
I know, it felt
like, you're showing the roadmap of what you want to say instead of, like, you're showing, not telling. And I'm a little tired of this.
But you noticed something that I didn't, that I want you to share with our auspicious viewers, about leadership. And I thought the whole thing, the obsession with Gloria Steinem, and all the mini Glorias walking around the convention was hilarious. But the fact that, like, Alice and Pamela, full of all this bravado in the car, like, when I see Gloria Steinem, I'm going to tell her this. And then, the power of celebrity, when they actually did see Gloria Steinem, they both froze. But the scene in the shared room, when Alice is watching the meeting of all the leaders of color and Gloria Steinem, you noticed something I didn't. So what was going on?
I mean, the whole episode up to that point, we had been told that Alice's only power came from Phyllis. That it was Phyllis's words that she spoke, that it was like she was a puppet in a lot of ways, and that's where she got her power. And then she's sitting in this room and watching arguably much more, at this point in American history, significant figure than Phyllis Schlafly on the floor in a hotel room, and goes around the circle and makes sure there is buy-in from everyone, listened to everyone, never gave someone a script, never belittled anyone the way that Phyllis constantly belittles everyone around her, to be completely frank. And that, I think that was a really great 1-2 punch of the now woman saying, like, but you articulate yourself very well.
Yeah.
And then watching how different Gloria and Phyllis were. And I think in a very real way, very quickly and very probably subconsciously, Alice was forced to think, what kind of person do I want to be here?
Yeah.
And in my mind, she chose Gloria, and she doesn't even know that that's what she chose, but that's what she chose. And then of course the contrast of, she's still pro-family, and in her mind, pro-family means these very specific things. They don't in my mind, they don't in the mind of a lot of other people, but of faith, I should say, in particular. But she was very clear that you can be pro-family and pro-people of color.
Yeah.
In a way that, we've talked about this, you win elections by making people afraid of things, and by focusing very, very small, very, very narrow, about problems. And because the right wing in this television show is not concerned with nuance, because nuance is actually the enemy of victory in a lot of ways. Sorry about that. My phone is not working. She introduced nuance into a room that was not interested in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, if the next scene is that rally, like, she's still, I think there would probably be some people that would see that and say, like, oh, well, she's now had this revelation, she shouldn't go to that rally. Well, first of all, it's not how humans work.
No.
She's always going to go and support, because there's still elements of that platform she believes in. But it wouldn't surprise me if this person was a real person, which Alice is not. She is a composite of a lot of other individuals. But if we asked the real life Alice, what were you thinking when you got out of that taxi? She would probably say, I have no idea. I didn't know what to think. I was so muddled.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that her first interaction with Phyllis was a negative one as well, like, kind of reinforced that fear and anxiety that she has, and, the belittling, that Phyllis isn't really interested in Alice as a person. It doesn't appear.
It's the performance. Go put on your face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus here, sit on the floor and scream at a salt pile for an hour. Yeah. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. So we don't know what she's going to do with that information. She stood up during some of the votes, or during the last vote. And before they turned around. So there were moments of kind of rebellion a little bit in Alice, but you're right, it takes a long time for a person to do that kind of paradigmatic shift. And so, we're not going to get to see the end result of this fictitious person, I don't think, and what she does, but it was a useful way to show it, albeit not my favorite episode. I do like what they had come out of it.
Yeah, I like where we ended up. I really didn't enjoy the process of getting there as much as they thought I was going to, but I don't like watching people on drug trips. It's why I don't watch Broad City. Like, it's just not, it's not my thing.
And like, it wasn't necessary to identify with her. Like, if they wanted us to empathize and identify with her journey, for me, that took me out of it.
Yeah.
But, for a lot of other people, I think it was low hanging fruit to be like, oh, it's the 70s, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like, this is what.
Or like, she would have never let down her defenses without drugs. Like, there, like a couple other things where I was like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, but she had a few cocktails. We've all been there.
Yeah, you could have just easily gone with that.
Yeah.
And we didn't need the pill. Yeah.
So anyway, we liked where we got in the end, even though we didn't like how we got there as much. But we'll see what happens in the final episode. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
It's not
the ERA does not pass.
It's not good news for the ERA, but we'll see if there's good news for anything else. It's hard to see all those women on the convention floor in such an amazing show of unity and solidarity, and to know that we've overcome a lot, but there's a lot still to overcome.
Yeah, we're still fighting for equal pay. So on that note,
we'll see
you guys for episode 9.
Take care.